This is WPSL Port St. Lucie, the talk of the Treasure Coast.
It's 11:07 at WPSL 1590, the talk of the Treasure Coast. You're on Ask a Rabbi.
And this is Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And as soon as I get my little Mevo talking to the internet, we're in good shape. There we go. It's hopefully going live. It's thinking about it. Okay. I love my computer.
Certainly.
So
if
much.
it doesn't work, kick it. That's.
Yeah.
I remember, and this goes way back. This is like 64, somewhere around there. I was at Loyola U, and I was working in the mailroom at KMPC. There was this old engineer. Amplifier went out. And of course, these are the days of, big tube amplifiers, right?
Right.
Gets up out of his chair, kind of mosey on over there, and just does a mule kick on this thing. Bam! Sound comes back. Everything's fine. I'm going. And he goes, if it doesn't work, kick it.
Yeah, I got that,
Oh, my.
And sometimes you have to redo things.
Yeah, reboot.
Reboot. Been there, done that many a time, so.
Yep. Haven't we all? Yeah, so how was your week?
My week has been over the top crazy because last Friday was the last day for a term at Kaiser, and Monday was the end of the course, the summer B at IRSC.
Yep.
And the conflation of two endings of courses was impressive. Especially because I tend to pity in some ways the summer kids because they've only got 6 weeks to do a ton of work. Now the Kaiser kids only have 4 weeks to do work, and they're used to it, so they pace and do their term paper in the third week usually. And I try to get the term paper a little
or the last night of the fourth week.
And there are some who do that.
Yes,
and unfortunately, I had extended the deadline for the kids at IRSC. And so, yeah.
So how many took advantage of it?
Far too many. Far too many.
That would have been me. I would have been in that group.
Yeah, it's and I get it, right? That's common. I certainly am deadline driven. This wouldn't be the first time that I've done that. Oh, good. I love technology.
Whoops. I think I hear you. Oh.
Yeah, you did hear me because
Never mind.
Technology. I love technology. It does not remember what I want in different cases. So that's always the fun thing.
So now you're kicking in to the next semester.
Yeah. Well, and I've got a little bit of time with that. Right. So, and it's not letting me.
So does Kaiser have any time off, or is it just...
Summer, this year we don't. Some years they do, some years they don't.
Huh. Okay.
And it varies. Okay.
Kind of difficult for planning purposes.
Well, no, the calendar's out there. What it is when there's only 2 weeks between winter and spring, then there's a week between summer and fall.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so we get 4 weeks off a year. And
Gotcha.
It depends on how the calendar falls, because Kaiser classes always start on a Monday. So it's a function of how the winter holidays fall.
Okay, dumb question. Obviously, Labor Day is coming up.
Right, and so that term...
You don't go to school that day, right?
No, the campus is closed and the classes start that Tuesday.
There you go. Okay.
So if New Year's were, say, Monday, it might be that classes start on Tuesday. But if that break between Christmas and New Year's, the way it depends on how it falls, whether it's appropriate to do 3 weeks or 2 weeks.
Gotcha. Okay.
And so it alternates, it flips. And we're in a period now where we had 3 weeks between winter and spring, which felt like a long time, actually. It went too quickly, but it feels like a long time. It went too quickly because my other half decided that was a good time to be sick.
Oh no. That's not fun.
Yeah, so that kind of ate up a big chunk of the holiday.
There you go.
Fortunately,
so how'd you enjoy your summer vacation?
yeah,
Oh no.
that would be the piece. So
So is he doing okay now?
yeah, he's doing well now.
Good.
He's doing well. So the piece that I had prepared to talk about, and folks, please feel free to call and let's discuss this, 772-340-1590. And anyone is welcome to call in and, come join us. So the topic is, my computer being a pain. I love my computer.
It's still going crazy?
It's still going crazy. It has
Good
not
grief.
yet decided to be a good kid. Oh, well, it may not. That's life. It just means I won't see the messages on I won't see the messages here. That's all that means. And anyway, so the topic is spare the rod and spoil the child. Does it mean that we should beat our children?
No.
Very good. What does it mean? Where does it come from?
Oh, my mother used to mention that all the time. I presume biblical day times.
It's an interpretation of a piece. Okay? And I'm going to throw a totally different spin on it than most people do. I'm going to say it means if you have too much compassion for the rod, then you're going to damage the child. And what do I mean by that? If you care more about the victim, about the perpetrator than you do the victim, you damage the victim.
Mm-hmm.
So it means almost exactly the opposite of what many people want to use it to mean.
That's interesting.
It doesn't mean beat the heck out of your child. It's a hard thing. So here's a couple of pieces. If we want the best lives for our children, if we want them to achieve the most that's possible, one of the biggest markers is whether or not parents read with and to the child. How's that for a surprise?
Wow. Well,
Spend some quality time
yeah.
reading.
Which we used to do all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. Just do 20 minutes, a half hour.
Yeah, when I wasn't playing, I was reading.
Yeah, it's
something.
actually a really good activity shortly before bed. Quiet everybody down, settle everybody down, learn some new words, hear some syntax, help the language center form properly, because the language center has a lot to do with cognitive thought.
That's why I got Playboy, because of the editorial.
Uh-huh. I used to like the interviews, okay.
Oh, I'm terrible.
And some of the best interviews were in that magazine.
Actually,
Yeah, they really were. They really were excellent interviews.
They were well written, yes.
So, and yeah, and today that book would be very mild
Yeah, probably would.
by many standards.
It probably would.
Although I understand, I don't know it from personal experience, but I understand that the overseas editions were not as tame. But,
Well, if you're going to go into like mores and stuff like that, the beaches over there sometimes.
Yeah. It depends on the local culture.
Sure.
And it has to do with what's sexualized.
Yeah.
Right. So, for example, for Orthodox Jewish women, the hair is sexualized, and that's why it's covered. Okay, and that's true in a number of other cultures. We see it.
Muslim is covered.
Yeah, it's
head to
typically
toe.
covered.
I mean,
Yeah. Well, it depends again on the strain and variety.
What is the rationale for like the burqa life?
Well, it's the kind of thing you're talking about. The overriding what Muhammad didn't say wear a burqa. He did not say that. What he said was be modest.
Okay.
Okay. And
makes perfect sense.
it makes complete sense. Don't stick out. Don't call attention to yourself. That's a whole different thing. So what each culture considers as modest is very different.
And that's handed down from generation to generation.
Right. So again, if you look at and I do this sometimes with some of my classes, today YouTube is amazing. You can get a video of just about anything. And so there are a couple of promotional videos that some of the shopping malls in Saudi Arabia have out there, or that travel people have put out of the shopping malls. And it's not the cheap shopping malls. It's
I'm sure.
It's a top rung shopping mall. But and the video focuses on this store and that store and who's selling what and how gorgeous it is. But I'll freeze frame the YouTube and I'll say, look at the men. They're covered. Look at the women. They're covered. And you don't see a man walking with every woman. Okay, so some of the stuff that we hear, we're not seeing. Now, that's not to say that human rights are well handled in Saudi Arabia. They're not. They're not. That's a tribal issue of having a royal family who runs everything. And everything goes as the royal family. And even within the royal family, there's incredible power striations of who can do and say what. So there's no real freedom in any part of Saudi Arabia. But if you look at the men, they're covered head to toe. Now, some of them are in Western dress, and some women are in Western dress, although they'll typically have a burqa over for going outside. But if you look in these shopping malls, there are incredible fashion stores that are selling everything and anything you could imagine. And some stores are staffed by women, and some stores are staffed by men.
But where do they wear them?
Underneath their burqa, and then they are wearing them in their homes. The burqa is just for outside wear. It's not for indoor wear.
Huh, okay.
Unless you're going to have outsiders in. If you're going to have non-family members come into the home, then they will cover. Again, it's the different, so here in the U.S., if I walk into somebody's home unannounced, I might catch them in their underwear. Because people sometimes wear their underwear in their homes, or whatever. She said, trying to not get too far.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get
right.
that.
But if they're going to have company, and that's not what they're going to wear.
No, definitely not.
They're not going to, they're not going to invite the boss over for dinner in their BVDs. Okay?
No, say work for BVD. Oh.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, gosh.
What was the living bra? It's nice enough to wear outside. Yeah, right.
But that's interesting. I didn't realize the men were also.
Yeah, that's what
covered
most people don't get, because they don't focus on that. We focus on the women. Now, typically, the men are in white, and the women are in black. The black has got to be warmer, certainly in the sun,
especially in Saudi Arabia.
Yeah. But I will say that wearing something loose covering that goes over your entire body is probably environmentally friendly. And what I mean by that, you know what it's like in Tucson. When I lived in Tucson, I wore long skirts all the time because they were the coolest article of clothing.
You're right. Actually, you're right. Yeah.
And here in Florida, I never do that. Okay? In Florida, I wear pants because the humidity affects what would have worked. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So,
I get that.
you know, that's really important. And anyway, yeah. So, just let somebody know that I'm not available to do 15 things. So, culture has a lot to do with how things are interpreted. Culture identifies a lot of things. It identifies gender roles for people. It identifies power levels and all kinds of things like that. And within that culture is how people then look at their sacred story, at their sacred rules, at whatever is going on. So it's an interconnected piece. And when a religion becomes a world religion, such as Islam or Christianity or Judaism, that it takes a piece, it takes the portable part of the culture, and it has to blend and meld with wherever it is, because the cultures are different. So what do I mean by that? I mean that, so for Islam, it means perhaps wearing the hijab, perhaps not. It's interesting that before 9/11, almost no American Muslims wore hijab, but it became important to identify, to wear that as part of their identity. And so why do we form identities? It's recognized as one of the most critical functions of adolescence. When a person hits puberty and goes from there until their prefrontal cortex is developed at around age 25, and I know we've talked about that many times. One of the most important things that individual does is work on their identity. Who are they? What's important to them? How are they going to express it? And it's a tumultuous time because they're taking the stuff from their family, which may well be a foreign culture. It very likely is in America. We are, I'm second generation American. My parents immigrated. And so I blend what they brought with them. Thank you, Mom, for wonderful pastries from Vienna. Right, things like that. And hopefully have created what I would like to think is a reasonable American identity. And part of my identity is being a professor, part of it's being a rabbi. There's many different parts and pieces, and it doesn't mean you can't change who and what you are. It's one of the most, I'll diverge for a second, one of the most notable pieces out of my bachelor's graduation. The baccalaureate speaker said, and that was Ashley Montague, and he said, "You are what you do and you do what you want. If you don't like what you do, then you change what you do. If you don't like what you are, then you change what you do." So I'll say that again more slowly. You are what you do and you do what you want. If you don't like what you are, then change what you do. It sounds very simple. It's not easy to do. It's easy to say, not easy to do. Lots of things fall in that category. But how we take our basic human needs, the need to survive, the need to feel important, the need for a variety and change in our life, and the need to love and be loved. Those are recognized as critical human needs. And I don't care whether you use Maslow's system or somebody else's. There's a number of different people who have described those basic needs. But the identity is how you choose to satisfy those needs. So are you somebody who, in order to feel significant, holds a gun to somebody? Because when you hold a gun on somebody, it's very significant. You are the most important thing on that person, in that person who's looking at the business end's life in the moment. So it satisfies that need. Is that acceptable? That's a cultural question. That's a morality culture question. It's a function of the morals of the culture. So if you live in an area where it's okay to pull out a gun to prove your point because you've run out of logical arguments, then that's one thing. And if it's not acceptable, then the tide will turn against the person holding the gun. Right? Bullying gets away with it because the majority accepts it. And as long as we say things like boys will be boys, and it's okay for somebody to aggress, it's okay for somebody to rape, then we've got a cultural problem. And that gets...
Well, we've had that cultural problem for a long time.
Well, of course we have. We've had it for a very long time. That doesn't make it right.
No, I get
right?
that.
You know, just because that's the way we've always done it doesn't make it right.
Right.
And so there are things that we can grow up and mature and do better. And that's where... going to come back to it. Spare the rod. If you care too much about the rod, then the child will be damaged.
You get to a situation where, you think about today's parents working 2, sometimes 3 jobs, and they don't get to spend that quality time
with their kids,
with their children. Yeah.
So there's a couple of things that I would offer in that scenario, that parents, so there's a recognition of different parental styles. One style of parent is you're going to do it because I said so, and those are the rules, and we're done. Okay, that's an authoritarian kind of, the dictator, the dictator in the house.
That's my Italian family.
And sometimes culture plays a role in that.
Yeah.
So there's dictatorial families. Then there's anything you want, honey, we'll do it for you. There are no boundaries. You want an SUV for your 16th birthday, we'll get you one.
Not in my family.
I understand, not in mine either.
You work for it.
Yeah.
Period.
Exactly. But everybody's family is different. That's the permissive family, the family that lets the child do anything they want. They've broken 3 cell phones, so we'll go get a 4th one. That's permissive. Then there's authoritative, which is different from authoritarian, but authoritative, who says, okay, you've got these freedoms, and as long as you're within these boundaries, whatever you want can go. You can pick what clothes you want to wear, but you're going to wear clothes. So there are boundaries. You're going to wear something appropriate for school, but you can pick which of the appropriate outfits you want to wear today. So the child has freedom, creativity, choices, but also has boundaries. That's an authoritative parent. The other kind of parent is the absentee parent, the neglectful parent. Whether it's by choice or because one parent has to travel for work, or God forbid one parent is dead, and you've got a single parent, you've got an absentee parent, and that creates certain problems. If the other parent then has to do those 3 or 4 jobs, the child could be left to fend for themselves. And that's not good either. And the interesting part is that the permissive, the helicopter parent, the neglectful parent all do the same damage to their child. Because the failure to set boundaries creates a lot of social problems.
I remember working on a couple sound stages and seeing what I would call stage mothers.
Yeah.
With some, youngish, they're teen talents, and, they were very successful. But you see the way the parents acted with the crew, I was really low on the totem pole. I was a gopher, and there were some that were very nice, but then there were others that were just despicable.
Yeah,
I couldn't even imagine being their child.
Yeah,
and it's like, that's
it's
this
true.
Poor kid.
And we see the evidence of parental styles very early. It starts showing up when the child is months old.
Really?
Yeah.
That young?
It starts showing up. And it
Really?
gets worse and worse, or more divergent. When the child has a strong, safe place to, and I'm not talking about the authoritarian, that's not good either, because it stifles creativity. And it stifles problem solving. Because everything's in one way done for the child. It's whatever the parent says, and they become totally submissive. So that's not good either. the authoritative, the one who provides boundaries but also provides freedom, is considered the best model. Why? Because it encourages the child to reach out into the world and to encounter problems and to take the first stab at solving them. But always there's a safe place to come home when you get yourself in trouble. You can come home with that kind of parent and say, I bit more off than I can really chew. Can you help me prioritize and how and what? And depending on, again, style, a child shouldn't be condemned for it. They should be, okay, let's look at it. Let's figure out how to work with it.
It's been such an education for Carol and me. The last couple of weeks, we're working the Christmas kids. The other project is back to school clothing, and this year,
make sure you include underwear in that.
Through the school district, and the homeless coalition with the school district, and talking to some of the women as we have, they would just tell us, we never in our worst nightmares ever thought we would be in this position. Mm-hmm. They were so grateful. The kids are marvelous. I mean, it's like, wow.
Yeah.
We don't know how lucky we are. We really don't.
Yeah, we don't. So, so here's the piece. You make a choice if you work multiple jobs to stay in the home and the car that you've got, or you downsize as much as you can. In Port St. Lucie, it's getting harder. Fort Pierce a little easier. And I recognize that. And, that's why my car is the junker it is. I don't want to take on a car payment.
I don't blame you.
So.
Don't blame you.
My car is paid for, and yes, it does occasionally have maintenance problems. And until those maintenance
Better
problems,
that than a car payment.
Until those maintenance problems become bigger or the car becomes untrustworthy. So I need to go make a small repair on it, but it's one that I'm going to do. Those are choices. Those are financial choices. And yes, it impacts how much time I can spend with my husband, Bill, with our fur kids, and with other people in the community. It affects what I can do. It affects my free time, how much I work.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of things affect that. So those are all choices. And to think that they're not, you don't have to have the newest and the greatest and the latest. And there are some ways to get some better things and lesser things. Yes, I have an iPhone 13 because of a wonderful promotion that I was able to do that and actually lower my phone bill. So it made all kinds of complete sense to do that. And it's not that I went out and bought a $1,000 phone.
Right. No, I get it. Yeah.
So the overall package is much better for us. But that's, to me, that's being fiscally responsible and making conscious choices.
With the Orthodox Jewish families.
Uh-huh. Going back to that.
How do they differ from, it's like, it seems like their rules are much stricter.
They've got some strict cultural rules that guide things. The families are not necessarily any different. The hardest part, I think, for an Orthodox family is that the insular quality of the community helps somebody who is maladapted function because of the secrecy and the unwillingness to bring in outside experts to help. And I don't think it leads to any one style of parenting or any one style of this or that. But I think that when somebody goes off on it, like the story Unorthodox, okay, the family setup between her family and the other family are just, it's a family dynamic. It's not the culture keeps it insulated and tends to lock them in. So there's a tendency to not want divorces.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, for a variety of reasons. The Catholic Church is similar, doesn't want divorce. They'll do it when everything
very reluctantly.
Yeah. And that's part of what's going on in Unorthodox, which is that Este's mother is in a horrible situation with a drunk husband, and she's not getting the support to bring the drunk into line. And you barely get that in the show. I haven't read the book, so I can't say to whether or not it's in the book. But there's a little bit of it, and there's one scene where he still loves her, the drunk, and tries to connect with her when she's there for the wedding. She's there very briefly for the wedding, and then leaves. And part of you can see is her repulsion at his drunkenness. So there's not the support for taking care of him as an alcoholic, and there's definitely not the support within the families and of taking care of her as a victim of his alcoholism. And a recognition of the disease of addiction. There's this myth that Jews are not alcoholics. Jews are alcoholics at the same rate and ratio as everybody else. It's 10 to 15% of the population. It's just there. And so there needs to be ways to help people get sober, to help them get the help they need. It is a disease. It's something that we need to treat and not sweep under the rug. But in Este's family, it's swept under the rug, and the rabbis don't want to give a divorce to the wife just because he's an alcoholic. But the things that life with him is not workable without somebody addressing his alcoholism.
Right. Wow.
So there's multiple things that are going on, and that's why the mother leaves. And when she leaves, she leaves. She gives up everything. And so Este comes into that, and she's growing up without a mother. She's got other female relatives helping to raise her, but it's still this dysfunctional thing that looks at her mother as somehow weak because she left, instead of finding some kind of happiness within the community. So there's this.
Certainly understandable that she'd leave.
Of course.
I mean,
she didn't see a solution within the community. Okay. And as Este grows up, she's got both a physical condition and a mental condition around sex and around conception and the pressure that's put on her to have a child. And you can see that nobody gets the special problems that she has. And her husband is being coached by his family that the problem is you're not being manly enough. So we get this gender garbage thrown on top of everything else. And Este can't take it. And so she flees. And where does she flee? She flees to Berlin, where her mother is. And tries to connect, but her mother is apparently in a same-sex relationship. So, so we don't know all the pieces and details that the book is.
Oh, brother.
Yeah, well,
It happens.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It happens. Again, there's a certain percentage of the population that's going to be LGBTQ, and it's just part of the human spectrum, part of human diversity. But when people don't get that, right, and they become scared by it, and you see this horrible set of behaviors, and you see the hypocrites. The one guy who pretends to be Orthodox, but he's really not. He's taking advantage of it. And the community takes advantage of him, and he takes advantage of the community, and it creates a very corrupt kind of thing. And that's the guy who tries to go with Este's husband to find her and bring her back. So there's a lot of social and family dynamics that are going on, and it's just cast within the Orthodox, within a closed community. The Orthodox community is considered closed. They don't want you in if you're not a member of the group. Why? Because you're not going to know the rules. You're not going to know what foods can be put on the table, how to cook them, you're not even going to know how to wash the dishes, because they do have rules about that.
They do?
Well, you don't mix meat and milk, for example.
Oh, the dairy and the
dairy.
Sure.
Right, and stuff like that. And so there's...
Okay.
So when you add that with the normal food preparation and cleanup, then the likelihood of somebody who doesn't know the rules messing things up for everybody else is very high. So there's a desire to, if you don't know how to read the labels to see what's in the food, if you don't know how to check, it's called a hechsher, for the certification that the ingredients are what they're supposed to be. That's what that is. It's a certification. But things are not happening that shouldn't happen in the manufacture of the food. And, somebody goes in and inspects it, and somebody pays for that inspection. And so that becomes a propaganda of it's a tax. It's not a tax, it's a service. There's a difference. It's a paid-for service.
What about the children? Are they rebellious?
Some of them are.
In that situation?
Yeah, of course. Children are children. Some will rebel, some will take it on. So there's another great, it's a comedy, and it's also set in an Orthodox setting, and it's Shtisel. That's an Israeli film about an Orthodox family in Israel. And it's subtitled, so anybody can watch it on, I think it's on Netflix.
Okay.
And I don't know where else it might be. But you can see there the variety of the kids who rebel and the kids who don't rebel, and a variety of family relationships. And it's kind of interesting. The scene in that show starts out, Shtisel is a family. It's a family name. And you're mostly involved with a father and son. The son is marrying age. In fact, he's an older marrying age. He's not yet married. He's a rabbi. He's a teacher rabbi. And the father is a teacher, becomes principal in time at the school where he's teaching. And he has recently lost his wife. So you have the family in mourning over the loss of the
mom.
The mom.
Yep.
And you see their ineptitudes in dealing with the crises of life. And it's kind of interesting. And you get some insights into the family there, but you also see some weird dynamics. You see the one who rebels, who comes back, who this is, who that's. And people get hurt along the way. And that's part of life. You do get hurt. Not everything is there is no rosy solution to life. What was it, Irma Bombeck? If life's a bowl of cherries, why do I have the pits?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm paraphrasing him.
No, but that's close.
Yeah, right.
Yep.
There's rain even in Florida and even in Arizona. Now, granted, when it rains in Arizona, everybody runs out to look at it because it's kind of cool. And I remember going and standing to watch the wash because that's amazing, the force in a wash when it rains.
River. Yeah.
It's a torrent. It's not a river.
Yeah, you're right.
It should be called the Tanque Verde Torrent, not the Tanque Verde River. And we do have somebody calling in. I can see it coming across. Who do we have? We have Logan from Fort Pierce on line 1. Thank you for calling in, Logan. Go ahead.
Okay, I have a question. Might sound kind of dumb, but I don't know much about the Jewish religion and all, but I do have a question about, you guys have been hated for, centuries? What the heck did y'all do way back when to get everybody to hate you? I don't understand that. Everywhere I've looked, what started it? I mean, you've been slaves, you've been annihilated, I just don't understand. What did y'all do thousands of years ago that peed everybody off?
It's the same thing. It's the same thing that hopefully we're still doing. And so for those on Facebook who don't hear your question, Logan, let me repeat it. And his question is, why is there anti-Semitism? Why do people hate the Jews? And I'm going to give you...
all the way back.
It happens as early Pharaoh, right? Pharaoh says, look at the Jews. They're prospering. They're doing too well. There's too many of them. If somebody attacks us, we have that old fifth column thing, right? They don't answer to me. They don't participate in the Egyptian religion. They do their own thing. Maybe they'll turn against us. Okay.
So they continue with that thought today, everybody.
And everybody continues with that thought, right? So everybody who comes along with another/newer religion, another or a newer one, and can't convince the Jews that, a direct connection with God is wrong, and the Jews say, well, I think we'll stay where we're at, they get mad because it's a challenge to the veracity of the new approach.
I just don't understand why, or what happened way back when to get everybody against the Jews, and
it's the unwillingness.
It continues to this day.
Yeah. Well, it's this continued relationship of a one-on-one with God, and that bothers a lot of people. And it's not that Jews think we're any better than anybody else. I'm sure there are some Jews who think they're better than everybody, including other Jews. That's an ego problem. I don't think that I'm any better than anybody else on the planet. I am one of the people. God doesn't make junk. And I think the bigger problem, Logan, is that you can't, not you, but that some people don't understand that two opinions can both be right and different. This idea that I have to be the only way is the issue. And I demonstrate this with my students and with my congregation by taking a figure on a plate that looks an awful lot like a 6 or a 9, depending on how you turn it. And I put it on the floor, and I put one person on one side and one person on the other, and one will say it looks like a 6, and the other one will say it looks like a 9. And, it's both. It's neither. And both are correct. But they see something different. And sometimes people are intolerant of other perspectives. And somebody who stands in the middle, Stuart likes to say he sees a balloon with a tail.
Have hate for centuries.
Yeah, people. Why do people hate, once upon a time, left-handers? Why do people hate people with blue eyes? Why do people hate people who have a different skin color? Why do people hate people of a different gender? A hater's going to hate. And until our culture says that looking at superficial qualities is not a justification for hate, we're going to have it. And the human species hasn't evolved to that place yet. We're working on it. We're getting better, hopefully. And when we
dated a Jewish girl at one time and was trying to ask her different things, about her culture. And just for example, just like the food, like you were talking about earlier. And I asked her, I said, well, what do Jewish women make the best? And she said, reservations. So...
Yeah. I got it. Yeah. I used to have a friend. I had a friend who passed recently who lived in Port St. Lucie, and in her kitchen was a sign that says, "I know how to cook, I just don't."
Yeah. There you go.
It's so some Jews follow the dietary rules, some don't. Some follow parts of it, some go all the way vegan. Again, it's not, the religion encompasses and allows for all of those. Now, for example, my congregation, we are Reform, and so our dietary rules are please don't bring in any pork or shellfish for a synagogue meal. I don't care what you eat at home or what you eat in the restaurant, but don't make it part of a congregational meal. Now, for Passover, we're more rigorous, and we don't want any bread. We want matzah and things like that. And those are very rigorous rules, and everybody decides how rigorous they're going to be in all of the various parts.
But if you think back to the times...
They make a lot of sense in the times.
With no refrigeration.
Oh, yeah.
All of that makes perfect sense.
A lot of it makes a lot of sense. And so the restriction against meat and milk actually is rabbinic. It's not even scriptural. The injunction in Torah is don't seethe the kid in its mother's milk. Don't kill the kid by boiling it in its mother's milk. That was a fertility ritual that was prevalent at the time. And it was a very cruel way for the baby to die. But it was considered good luck to sprinkle that on your fields, and it would, whatever.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's and it's in a section of how to slaughter animals humanely. And so it says that. And the story in Talmud says that two of the rabbis were standing in the marketplace, and they overheard some women talking about a recipe of taking lamb meat and boiling it in milk. And they became afraid that somebody would accidentally violate because they would inadvertently use the mother's milk somehow to make this meal. And so without intending it to be this cruel ritual, they might accidentally step over that line. And then it becomes a slippery slope fear. And so the rabbi said, so we're going to separate meat and milk. And it's worth noting that Rabbi Akiva looked at that and said, Hillel, said, when we look at glazed dishes, then we can't allow the rich to only have one set of dishes, the glazed dishes that aren't porous, whereas the poor have to live with earthenware. We're not going to allow the glazed because there might be a crack that you don't see, and it exposes the earthenware. It was a way of preventing the rich from having a disproportionate advantage.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, if you can afford glazed dishes, you need to afford two of them. 2 sets. So Logan, so there are cultural differences, there are religious injunctions, and it's not that the key, I think, also comes out of Torah, and it says, Lo b'shamayim, it is not in heaven, it's not so far away, and it's not at the bottom of the sea, it's not across the mountains, it's not in the sky. These are rules and injunctions and instructions to help you live a full life, to help you be godly and feeling God-connected. And that's what Judaism is. Not a religion that says we found God. Judaism is a seeking religion. It's a religion where we come together and we seek an experience of God's presence. And we recognize that everybody has them. I mean, Torah has a story of Bilam. He's clearly not Jewish. And he and his donkey have this discussion with an angel and God. That's clearly Torah saying other systems work and God's connected to others as well. There is not only one path to God. God is too big. God is not Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Hindu, Buddhist. God is God.
All the above.
All the above. They're just different cultural ways of seeking to make the divine part of life. And as long as that doesn't involve hurting somebody, I don't see a problem with any of them. So I have the problem with the bully who wants everybody to do things his or her way.
What amazes me is, of course, there's so much talk out there of equality in pay and and gender equality and stuff. This goes all the way back to the Torah and biblical days.
Gender, lots of things.
Gender inequality.
Torah, in its own way, wanted it too. It was fighting a cultural issue. The challenge, I think, in ancient days was because the population was so sparse and there was so much work to do, that having as many children as you could, and with infant mortality that is never discussed. There's only one baby that dies in all of Scripture, and that's David's illegitimate child. That's a whole nother show. I saw the look on your face.
This looks like, this could be.
That's a whole nother show. David and how not to be king of Israel. Okay, and by the way, we'll discuss that in 2 weeks because next week's going to be a best of.
Cool.
So I will talk to people maybe in 2 weeks. Maybe if somebody reminds me, I'll talk about David. But when you had to have women having as many children as possible so that the population could increase, that creates a need, especially without drugs to stop early delivery and without those kinds of things. You need to keep an eye on how to have the most kids. And so there's a division of labor. Women tended to own and take care of animals. Men tended to take care of the land and own the land. So you needed both. It's a power balance. In some parts, in some cultures, all the brothers marry one woman so that the land stays in the family.
Whoa, wait a minute. Back up. What?
So go and research the history of marriage. It's an interesting piece. all of the brothers marry one woman and I believe it's the Himalayas. I'd have to double check to make sure. But it's because land is sparse and they don't want it divided and divided and divided until there's nothing left. And they don't want to do a eldest takes all kind of system. So all of the brothers marry one woman, regardless, I don't know how many actually have children with her, but all of the males that she has will marry one woman so that the land stays in the family.
Wow, and this is in the Himalayas.
I think it's the Himalayas.
Wow.
I'd have to double check, but that is so culture.
Wow.
So weddings, marriages are a financial institution more than anything else. In America, we think it's just for love. It's not just about love. Try getting divorced and you'll see. As my good friend Dr. Keeping just said, try getting a divorce and you'll see how much marriage is about money. Right, divorce is a way to make a lawyer rich.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Right, and it's very expensive to get out of a marriage, properly. So we have all these different cultural things that play into what are the thises and the that's, and here's the big piece with gender, and I'll probably make this my last point for the day because I've only got a couple minutes left, and that is that until we look at all genders equally and judge people according to what they bring to the table, we are robbing ourselves of the best. Because the best might not look, sound, taste, smell like us. Right, so if the best person is of a different skin color, different eye shape, and a different gender than you are, you still need to consider them because it's what they bring to the table, not what they look like or what religion they practice, as long as nobody's hurting anybody. There's enough on this planet for us to share.
Yeah, why should we care?
We shouldn't care. We shouldn't care. People need to be able to achieve and do according to their abilities, not according to who were their parents. But people of poor quality are offended by people seeking.
Now that's very true.
Yeah. Yeah. It was taught that way back when, that a man of quality is never threatened by a woman seeking equality. So that's as good a place as any to end this. This has been Rabbi Shafir Loeb for Congregation Eitz Chayim, your Jewish home on the Treasure Coast. And we meet on Friday nights at 7:30 at 540 Northwest University Boulevard, Suite 102, front building, right by the elevators. And that's Friday nights at 7:30. And you can also catch us on Facebook on streaming. It's publicly open, so you don't have to have a Facebook account. Anybody can come see our services. And you can also catch us at www.eitzchayim.org or on Facebook.
Have a good week.
You too. Take care. See you in 2 weeks.
You've been listening to Ask a Rabbi right here on WPSL, Port St. Lucie. Talk of the Treasure Coast, webcaster to the world.